had and used her Facebook profile to make bomb threats to her school. Now, the result of that was this young girl being incarcerated, being arrested and being incarcerated for well over a week, with the police not having the tech-savvy nature that the bullies had. She was incarcerated as this girl was no more than 13 years old, mind you. So her bullies proliferated this crime using her profile, and as a result, this child was emotionally traumatized by having to go through the process of being placed in handcuffs and being detained away from her parents for well over a week before the authorities could have discovered that she was not the one responsible for giving the threat to the school. So when you are talking about cyberbullying, on one hand, it can get to levels where it destroys the child's life and credibility, because we are now living in this majorly tech-savvy world where what you post matters. What you state as your character online matters, you know, and it's now a world within which you have people online being able to chart and take power over your life through the internet just as well. Yes, it is true that you might be able to block the bully. There are mechanisms known as dummy profiles that people can take up, and it's only so many profiles that you may be able to block upon which you would be bullied. There's also the concept of catfishing, where you would think that the person who has befriended you is one person when they are clearly not that person, they're someone else. And these are all strategies that bullies in schools utilize to get to children, you know, and I stress on that because in getting to understand the story a little bit more, you realize it is quite easy for us to blame the parents. But in the situation that exists with this girl, prior to being expelled, prior to even the morning of her stabbing this fellow student, it was later found out that this child was being bullied to the point where her peers threatened to shoot her. And those who were in the school laughed at some of the reports that she made, did nothing when she made these reports, until she eventually could take it no more and lashed out with stabbing one of the people who was bullying her in the school. The father of this child got onto media and explained that this child did not come from a broken home, did not come from, you know, broken circumstances. Both him and his mother, the grandmother, and the family, they were all involved in this child's life. But this child was being bullied in school, and quite often it is difficult for young people to open up to their parents, to their family, to say, I am being bullied, I'm being taken advantage of in school. Quite often, there is that discourse in communication between child and parent, because with bullying, there comes a certain measure and level of embarrassment. There comes a certain level of demoralization that prevents the victim from being able to stand up and say, I am being taken advantage of. And so all of these are factors that seed in to the situations that we have going on in our schools right now. And yes, you are quite right, Professor. Cyberbullying, because it's not widely understood by, let's say, the more mature element is a factor that is not truly conceptualized as being effective bullying, but essentially it is bullying that demoralizes the victim and also embarrasses them into silence with some of the pranks that the bullies would perform. So I would end my contribution there.
Thank you, George, and thank you for being kind enough to say mature instead of calling people like me old. Because I listened to you carefully, and you referred to as the more mature. So let me commend you for that, George. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And
no problem. I am quickly on those ranks as well.
Thanks for that explanation, Shakir.
Yes, I just wanted to add to what George would have shared. You know, Professor, you asked the question and you put yourself in the shoes of someone saying where, well, you know, for me, you know, bullying, you're in the space with the other students, and you know, how does this work when you have it on an online setting, you know? And if we are to understand the mind of the child, the teenager that we're dealing with now, they learn from their peers that their social identity is wrapped up on social media, on their presence on social media, you know. So there's a part of themselves that is represented online. And one of the differences between cyberbullying and bullying, let's say in a classroom, is that a classroom is still a minute number, let's say a small number. But when you're bullied, when cyberbullying takes place, there's no limit in terms of how many people can be exposed to you in a particular situation. There's no limit to it, you know. So you can have large audiences. There can be anonymous attacks that people can do, and George would have spoken about some of them. But my identity can be challenged online, can be called to question, and you know, a lot of young people, when you target that, you know, what am I to do if this is me? And you embarrass me, you release a video of me or a picture of me, then you tarnish my identity, my social identity, my identity in the eyes of my peers and how they see me. How do I come back from that? You know, how do I come back from that? And so it's a real threat to the mental health of a child, because someone can expose you online. Someone can say things about you online, and you can't fight back in a way that, and you may not be able to fight back. And a lot of the fighting back is the words that we use. But children are vulnerable. Lack of supervision. All of these are things that cause cyberbullying to be so prominent. You know, and then a child can be easily influenced by things that are happening, by all of these challenges that we have out there. It can be easily influenced. So you have the school microcosm, and then you have this larger microcosm, this larger system, this online system, and all your friends are on it. Everybody's on it. The TikTok, the Instagrams, they're all on it. And so you have to present a particular image of yourself. And whereas you, Professor, might be able to say, right, let me close the computer and go and sleep, or let me check into Facebook once for the day or whatever, they may check into Facebook 100 times for the day. Because remember, this is their identity we're dealing with. And so the way that they present themselves, they're looking for the affirmations, they're looking for the likes, they're looking for the views, they're looking for all of that contributes to how someone feels about himself or herself. You know, so there's a lot that goes into it. It is a big thing now, and because online schooling would have forced many children, and I mean, I use the word force, but many children would have had to be online in a way that they may not have previously been. It opened the door for cyberbullying to take place on a scale that was never there before.
Yeah. Indeed, folks, if you've just joined us, you're listening to Mentor on Isaac 90.1 FM, FBN TV, and Isaac the Promise Facebook page. Tonight we have myself, Noel, Professor Richards. I don't have to introduce myself. I realize that I am Noel Richards, also called Professor. You know, one of the hosts of the program, and then we have Riquen, and we also have George Thomas, who you heard from before. our guest tonight, Shakir London, psychotherapist. And as we continue, Shakir, doesn't this say then, reflect on the parents? Because if my child is on TikTok and Facebook and all this, the social media, if my child is on social media, shouldn't I be monitoring what is going on? As a parent, if it is that I don't know what's going on with my child so much so that they could be being bullied and I don't know, doesn't it say something about me? And so I come back to this thing about, the public view of what is going on, that the parents are to blame. Isn't it part of the responsibility of the parents to know what is happening in the life of the child, particularly as the father, the head of the home, as this is meant talk? All right? And we're trying to ask the question, is the father partly responsible or largely responsible for what is going on in terms of the school violence? I'm asking that question. Shouldn't the parents know what is happening on social media with their children?
Professor, the easy answer is yes, the parents should know. But I think so many of us forget. We forget when we were that age. 14, 15, 16. Professor, how much did your mother and father know about what was happening in your life? Young people keep secrets. I know I kept secrets from my parents. They didn't know everything. And you became very clever as a young adult, a teenager, as the case may be, at hiding things that you did not want your parents to know about you. Whether it is you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, whatever it is. We became very clever. Nevertheless, parents ought to be mindful that, your parents say, I'll put my head on a block for my child. Parents ought to be mindful that your child will attempt to hide things from you. Parents ought to be vigilant with regards to your children. Parents ought to be vigilant. We cannot take it for granted. And too many times I have teens that come in for counseling, and they would say to me, Mr. London, my mother don't know me, She thinks she knows me, but she doesn't know me. And then you hear them coming in with the cry of the trauma, the pain, the distress when the sexual abuse happened or the incest. They come in with the pain of it, and daddy is clueless, mommy is clueless. And so there's this disconnect. And so, yes, the parents should know. Yes, I should notice when my child comes home and is acting different. Something is wrong. They do not seem to be sleeping. They not seem to be eating properly. The way that the changes in their mood, and some of this is synonymous with adolescents. But still, I ought to be vigilant with regards to my child, so that when they are going through distress, can you imagine that, Professor? My child is going through distress and I do not know. I do not see it. I miss the signs. Yeah. And as a father, especially if you're a father in the home, I ought to take some responsibility, because you have too many cases where the father is there, but it's like he's not there. He's present, but emotionally and all other intents and purposes, he's absent. And there's a disconnect. And I feel, Professor, part of that is rooted in our idea of masculinity and fatherhood and what it looks like. I will stop there. And here the other men can jump in, but we...
Well, I see Riquen has been silent so far. He's not a man that usually keeps silent. I want to ask him if he has anything if he wants to jump in here on any of the points that we've raised so far this evening. Riquen, your thoughts?
Sure. All right. Going back to the very first question that you asked in terms of, who's to blame? The word blame has a negative connotation. And I would prefer to use the word responsible. Who is responsible? And if we take an objective look, have you ever been to an art show, an art gallery? and you're looking at a painting. Well, probably not, but you're looking at a painting and that's okay. You're looking at a painting and you seeing something, but what you are seeing might not be the same thing somebody else is seeing. And if you take a step back and you look again, or you change your angle, you may see something totally different. And very often what happens is when we have these kinds of incidents and events, we have knee-jerk reactions from kind of up close and personal, based on what's in the news and what's featuring, and we focus on the knife and all this sort of what she doing with a knife and so on and so forth. But what if we step back and we ask, what are the root issues here? And that is going to take us down a road that will lead us to a point of admission, and I said it last week, that all of us must assume some responsibility for where we are. So it's not just the men. And think of this. There are a number of parents who, let me put it this way, a number of us parents, so I'm identifying with the parents, a number of us parents were ill-prepared and ill-equipped for parenthood. And so we entered into this arena that we're not skilled for, we're not trained for. And of course, as children, many of us in certain aspects were still children. And so here we have a responsibility for another child, but we ourselves have not grown to a particular place. We have not reached a certain capacity in terms of our mental and our emotional ability. And so you have a proliferation of homes where you have children who are parents. You have parents who have the age, but they don't have the know-how, they don't have the wisdom. You have situations, you have homes where there's a lack of supervision. There's nobody holding things down. When we were growing up, the concept of the extended family was a much more popular concept. So when if the parents went out to work, there's probably an auntie at home or a granny at home or uncle at home, somebody who could supervise, somebody who could throw an eye, somebody who could be present. And so very often is not a case where is bad parenting necessarily, but is a case where, listen, I am up to my neck in being busy and work in responsibilities, and then I come home, I'm tired, I'm stressed, I might still have to cook, wash and clean, help you do your homework, and still make time to hear how your day went and that sort of stuff. And a lot of us really and truly have not developed that habit of connecting at that level. We don't connect at the level of being transparent and open and, okay, so how are things with you? How was your day? And when you ask that question nowadays, the children telling you, well, normal. It was all right. Yeah. It was okay. Just one word answers. So it's more of a challenge to connect, So I would stop there for the time being. There's a whole lot of stuff involved in this conversation.
Indeed. Again, this is Men Talk on Isaac 98.1 FM, The Promise, FBM TV, and Isaac, The Promise, our Facebook page. you can view as well as listen to the conversation. So, gentlemen, I mean, we're identifying, some of the possible causes. Shakir talked about the pandemic, and that was just one of the reasons. And we are looking at whether it's bad parenting or not. But the thing is, even if we identify or what caused this thing or what it's not, like, for example, we say it's not bad parenting. The question is, how do we get around this thing? Because it can't continue. It cannot continue the way it's going, because I looked at some of those videos and those children are not, long time when we fight, when we fought long time, a little slap and a little cuff and a little, you push me and I push you and that sort of thing. Now, they seem to want blood. They seem to want to damage the other person. You could see the rage and the anger. So how do we help these young people? Because if it's not bad parenting, it's bad something. Something is causing it, and we have to help them. Because when you're in a situation, you can't help yourself. There must be some sort of intervention. The question is, how do we intervene and make this country a better country? Because I can still say, well, my children are involved with no fight, so, I good. But are we really good? Are we really good because our children are not directly involved? Because if you look at those videos as well, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask Shakir about. If you look at some of those videos, the person who was videotaping, that's one. But some of the others were encouraging it, and they were laughing and carrying on in some of the videos. They were there now. In some of the videos you see, and people trying to part the fight, some adults trying to part the fight, and they themselves too, they have to be very careful, especially with the kind of rage and thing that was being displayed with these young people. But there were students who were encouraging it. When I was growing up and two people fighting, we used to say, heave. Right? And that means, yeah, we're enjoying it and encouraging them to fight. But we didn't do that to the point of blood. Or we didn't do that. We didn't see any knives or any guns or anything like that. It was just normal hand-to-hand fist fight. But now there are weapons, and now even though there are no weapon, their hand is a weapon, they're picking up anything. So the question is, how do we help them? Because my children might not have been directly involved in the fight, but my child might have been there when it was going on, and my child seeing that. So what can we do? What are some of the possible ways that we, as parents and as adults, can help young people, can contribute to it? Because it's not far removed from us, it's right in our faces. Let's see if we could come up with some suggestions now. Maybe, not maybe, other parents are listening, one, and maybe the Ministry of Education is listening, and social services, let's hope that they're listening, or they listen to the, afterwards the recording of this. Let's see if we could give some suggestions to the parents, the teachers, and whoever else. In fact, maybe I should ask the question, who needs to be involved in this? Who needs to be involved in the solution finding or being part of the solution in this thing? But I was going to ask Shakir, but I see George's hand is up. So George, go ahead.
All right. I'm going to bring back to you, Professor, some wise words that you shared with me some time ago. And those words are, when you think of a bull versus a matador, from the moment the bull recognizes that the red flag in front of his face is not his enemy, the fight is ended. In other words, from the moment the bull recognizes and sees the matador for who he really is, for being the enemy, there's no matador that can really fight with a bull that is driven and focused. In saying that, this is what I'm alluding to. We need to take a look at ourselves as a society and recognize that the behaviors that our young people are displaying are simply a reflection of the behaviors that we are displaying. Because when you really look at it, look at a number of the videos that they are posting, You see a number of adults in matters of adult situations where people instantly pull out their phones and they start recording. I remember one that comes to mind where there was a man that could have been my grandfather standing up to a police officer and slapping him. And this was being recorded by a bystander, and rather than condemning this destructive action, there were adults cheering the man on until eventually the police that were around overwhelmed the man and they took him away in one of their vehicles and that sort of thing. You realize that the children are emulating our very own behavior as a society. So it's more than just the parents that are to blame. We as a society find ourselves with equal responsibility in what we are seeing in our schools today. And the moment we get to that place where we own up and recognize that they are simply reflecting our very own behavior, that's the period and the point within which we can start working on solutions in terms of leading by example. Within our communities, we need, as adults, as fathers, as mothers, as parents, as members of the community, to lead by example in the way that we interact with one another. How often have we heard of situations where instead of adults being able to resolve a traffic incident, someone reaches inside of their vehicle for a weapon? How often have we heard of situations where, because of a dispute, one man walks away and comes back with a gun and levels everyone who he disagrees with? If we are pointing fingers, we need to recall the fact that when one is pointed in another direction, there are 3 or 4 being pointed right back at us. And we need to look within to rectify this situation that is going on in our schools today, because our children are looking at us and they are reflecting to us our very own behavior. Because of their enthusiasm and their youth, it may come out in a more provocative way, but it is the same behavior that they are seeing from us as a nation, as a society, and they are reflecting a very profound image of ourselves back to us.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Shakir, in terms of who should get involved and I guess how, what do we do?
Yes, Professor. Wow, it is not an easy question. It's not an easy question to answer, and it's one that I would have reflected on for some days now since the incident took place. First of all, we all have a part to play in bringing about the type of society that we want. What does dealing with it look like? I mean, if we're going to start with the parents, I believe that for many parents, what they think is okay parenting or good parenting may not necessarily be that, may not necessarily be best practice geared towards raising a child that will be emotionally balanced, respectful, carrying certain values, and contributing to the society in a particular way. So, just in terms of being humble enough to look inwards, parents, and question the type of parenting that I saw and that I am duplicating in my household. And therapy helps with that on that scale in terms of dissecting that. But there's some other things that I kind of thought about, and I'm hoping, Professor, as you said, that there are persons from different walks of life that will be listening. Firstly, I asked myself, what works for youth? Because we're dealing now with the young people. What has worked for youth? And the majority of young people pass through schools, so schools provide an opportunity to reach youth especially if we aren't able to get them in their homes in the way that we would like. And so I believe more resources need to be placed in the school system. I heard of, I don't know if it's either Grenada or Guyana, but one of them earlier this week spoke about having a counseling bus. It's like a mental health bus where they dispatch a whole team of counselors to different schools to just work with the students and the impact that was having. We need more resources, and if the social workers and the guidance counselors are not enough, and we know they are not enough right now to deal with the school populations, this is on a governmental level. We need to have more input into this. the utilization of things like youth forum, youth groups. You know, you have the police youth clubs. We need more youth groups in our communities, Professor. And stress the importance of youths being a part of these things. When children are part of Boy Scouts and girls guys, they call it, and the church youth groups and the police youth clubs, these groups impact the development of a child in positive ways, because it allows them to develop social, the way they present socially. They learn social cues. They learn about treating with conflict situations, managing emotions. You want to have opportunities where you can speak directly to the child, and that doesn't always present itself in the school setting. And so the groups provide an ideal opportunity. Why aren't we seeing more of these in our communities? We need to see more. Every 13, 14-year-old need to be in a group, not in a gang, no, but in some type of group that will positively edify them. So, I mean, that is just my 2 cents on it. But there's more, Professor, that I can see, but I will stop. I see Riqen's hand is up, and I can always jump back in later on.
No problem. Riquen.
Sure. Some great points made by Shakir there. And what they point to is the fact that the challenge that we face is systemic. It is not the cause of any one particular issue or challenge. And so in order to overcome it, it requires a multi-pronged, multifaceted approach, probably multidisciplinary, of course. And as Shakir was ending off, one of the things that I reflected on is that the pandemic has done significant damage, not just in terms of incarceration, but in terms of the disruption of some of the programs that he is alluding to that did exist. They were running, they were functional, they were operational. But because we didn't have the opportunity to actually meet or to gather in person, a lot of these initiatives, they lost steam, they lost momentum. And so a lot of the involvement of our young people was impacted as a result of the pandemic. And so it's as if it's like a car that you had working all the time, and then you rested down for 2 years. And you started back and you're getting a sputtering. And it takes time to come back to full functionality. And so that is an issue I think we need to be mindful of. And at the same time, for all those who are involved in these extracurricular activities, the clubs, the sport clubs, the youth clubs, the youth groups, the different avenues that young people had to express themselves, not just to let out steam, but actually to be able to tap into some of their latent abilities and the talents and the gifts and so on. Those who were musicians and artists, sports people, etc., etc. There was a denial of that opportunity to express themselves. And so the pace at which these activities have come back on stream, I think has slowed down. That's something we need to be mindful of. I was looking at a statistic there, the Minister of Education indicated in media conference, I believe it was, that since the beginning of this term in April, 1,318 children have been suspended.
Ooh.
That is,
wow.
I don't know how. I just saw it while checking online there. Over 1,300 suspensions in just over 2 months. And that is serious cause for reflection, serious cause for consideration. And those suspensions were over 4 main areas: weapons, drugs, fights, and sexual misconduct. And based on that same press conference, one of the things, one of the suggestions that came out was a point system, a merit or demerit system for students. I'm not sure how that is going to work, but it probably deserves some consideration. One of the points that came out of it was that a lot of the altercations with students took place during lunchtime. Now, here's why that is significant. Because according to, and I guess Shakir could correct me if I'm wrong, teachers would tell you that they are under no obligation. According to the Act, they are under no obligation to supervise any student during their lunch hour. And so you have a lot of teachers, they go in the staff room and they have their lunch. And it is during that period where a lot of these fights and so on take place, because listen, after teachers put out all that time and energy, they need a break. You understand? And so they go in the comfort, the air condition of the staff room and so on, and they have lunch to replenish the supplies for the afternoon session. And it is during that period where the masses break free. And so we have to find a system, we have to find a way to impose some kind of control during that lunch hour period. Now, I'll make this last point. I'm sure some of us may have seen circulating on social media a video highlighting a group called Dads on Duty. It's a group of guys, fathers in the US. And what was happening is pretty much the same thing that was happening in our schools right now. Fights breaking out every single day. And the teachers could not control the situation. And these fathers, and when you look at some of them, they're big.
Yeah.
They're massive. You understand? You're sure they can't run nobody down, but just their presence. And they decided, listen, let us take matters into our own hand. Let us establish a presence in the school. And we're not there to bully anybody. We're there just to be there. And you know what? There was no violence in the schools after. There were no fights. Children started to cooperate. And it caused you to wonder, is this the same school? Are these the same students? Why? Because these fathers decided to take an initiative. Obviously, the school permitted it, and so that's something we have to look into. How can the school system facilitate that type of intervention where there can be a presence of fathers within the school system to discourage that type of behavior? All right, so I'll stop there for now.
Thank you so much, Riquen. Folks, if you've just joined us, you are listening to Men Talk on Isaac 90.1 FM, The Promise. We are also on Facebook, that's Isaac The Promise, and also on YouTube, FBN TV. You can get this recording even afterwards. So we want to, encourage you to do that. I'm Noel, Professor Richards. We have our guest Shakir London, my co-host Riquen Allen, and George Thomas.
Hi, Professor. Professor. Sorry, well, I
Yes.
guess you were good. You were just going to intro that again. We have a call on the line at the moment. Should we take it at this time?
Right. Good. Yeah, we'll take the call, and we just want to let you know that if you want to call, the numbers are 622-1981 and 628-1981. Give us a call.
Hello. Good evening, sir.
What you think.
Oh, hello.
Good night.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, is Grong here.
Yes, Grong, go ahead.
No,
Yes, Mr. Grong.
no, Now, hear this, right? I'm driving down the road and I had to park up to call all because I taken in the program, right? But now, everything all is saying sounding real sweet. But I want to tell all of this. You see, hear what missing, right? And I'm being as honest as possible. People need to realize when these school children started to really get out of hand was when government, not just in Trinidad but around the world, stopped making the teachers and the principals have the power to beat children. You see, from the time that now we believe in the Bible, and the Bible say, spare the rod and spoil the child. And we want to come and tell people all kind of sweet things to do this and to do that. But let me say that you see the good ones, the children who really want to straighten up, them will take that. But you see the ones who really want to get into real trouble and their business, they need the rod of correction. They need some, and some of them just need a go over whip, you know. Some of them need some good hand, for real, are out.
All right, Ground. Ground want to take control. Yes, Mr. Ground Control. In case you don't know, that's one of our DJs here at 98.
Professor, we have another call at the moment.
Yeah.
Hello, good evening.
Let's go.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, sir.
I think it's Richard, a very good subject, and the gentleman explained about the computer and the use of social media and its ability to be so flexible. Just 2 points. One is that it is impossible to check if you have a phone. It's impossible for the parents to monitor the movement on the phone. As soon as you hear your parent coming, you're going to delete the page and go to something else. And the phone could slip. The gentleman there who knows about it, the phone could slip from A to B. So when you think you take your telephone and looking at it, it's not A. The second point is, in the community at large, the maximum penalty we have in Trinidad is for any crime. I think, well, could I say murder, is life sentence. There's no hanging. So even a child at school, even in joking or in serious, if I kill you, nothing's going to happen to me. The most they'll do is lock me.
Hello. All right, we may have lost that. We may have lost that caller.
Okay. All right. Well, I understand what he's saying. Yeah, to the first point here, we understand that children are very smart, they're tech savvy, more than us parents, more than the mature ones, according to George.
We have another call at the moment.
So we understand that. To say that, okay, let's go. Let's go to call.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good evening, sir.
Interesting topic. Yeah, you see, now, because first I will say that the question, the parents, not all, because some children have a mind of their own, right? But the majority of these indisciplined behavior by these children is because what they see, what is practiced by their parents. And some of the parents are deliberate, and both men and women, it's not no, but because some children go up in homes without men, and they carry the same guilty behavior. So it's men and women, you have to take the responsibility. And right? And now, if you see that the question involved is that some children, when they for instance, look, that particular incident that took place there, both the one that was in hospital and the one that was in prison, both parents, they gave a report on them. And if you hear that report, that those children were trained by the Virgin Mary, they were very good children, right? And if I am saying one of the parents here were lying, because if it was the type of report that those parents gave, those two different parents gave on those two children, if that was right, it would not have reached the stage where violence come in. It might have been a little argument in the case. So one of the parents is lying, right? And I have parents that go to school and threaten teachers because of the fact that disciplinary actions is being taken. by these children. They go and threaten them and all these type of things. So you're bound to blame the parents, right? And the question of the computer stages, right? Well, you have to blame the children on that stage because of the fact that you as a child supposed to keep your guardians or parents up to date with all what has taken place. And if you're hiding things from them, which they cannot detect, and they get into trouble, well, that is your fault. Right? So thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
sir.
so much, sir.
We have another call, Professor.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening.
Go ahead.
Yeah, pleasant night, and you all have a proper topic there.
Thank you.
Ground control called just now and made a significant point. But the problem is, when a teacher disciplines a student, and that student has a so-called community leader as his or her father, what will happen next? Think about it. That's food for thoughts. All right?
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
Another call. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening, sir. Go ahead.
Very relevant topic tonight. I want to start by saying there's no such thing as delinquent children. There's such a thing as delinquent parents. The issue about the devices and the computer, there are so many parental apps available for parents, whether you know or you don't know. They simply take the device store and provide devices, and they give you a parental app. Anything the child tries to download or the user tries to download on the device that is not authorized by you cannot be allowed. A message comes to your phone or your device that tells you the child is trying to go into something that is not on the device or authorized by you for them to see. There are apps that can tell you automatically turns off the device at a particular time set by you and turns it back on. So there are so many avenues available to parents, whether they know how to do the device or not, that can assist them, assist us in managing our children. When you observe these children now, the boys want to plait their hair to go to school, and the way how they behave and the things that they do, it starts in the home. If you give them that leverage from the onset, it transcends out into the school and the society. We have to put these measures in place. The young ladies no longer want to plait the hair, they want to cut the hair. And the men no longer want to cut the hair, they want to plait the hair. The whole issue of school rules and the following of the rules has gone out the door. Therefore, the respect for authority also is an offspring of that whole situation. And this is what we are facing now. What do we do at this stage when the car is seen that the horse is already out in the open? How do we put measures in place to curb or control? This is our present situation that we need to address.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Let me just make one quick comment, sir. I hear you concerning the parental app, but I want to let you know children know how to get around those things, sir. Trust me, I've seen it. So that's not a foolproof way of preventing the children from doing what they want. So we want to continue, but I see Riquen hand is up. Do we have another call at the solar?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, Riquen, I see your hand is up, so you wanted to make a point?
Yes, it's in response to what ground control said.
We have a call. Professor. Hello, good evening.
Yes, pleasant good evening to Professor and the panel.
Thank you.
I've been listening to the contribution of all. I think you all have a clear knowledge as to what is really transpired among the youth today. You all would have touched on the physical aspect of how we're supposed to treat, right? With such, disciplines and all those kind of things. But something was said earlier, I think in the preambles, the question was asked if the parents are responsible, if they believe that the parents are responsible for such actions, right? And I think it was identified as yes, right? Parents, yes, will have that responsibility, right, to bring up the children in the admiration of the Lord, in the fear of the Lord, and in the admiration of the Lord. And you would realize that there are parents having that responsibility, but not understanding that, or even know that they have that responsibility. So what's supposed to be passed on to the children, right, is not being passed on. And then we're being left with all the various, social medias and all the various things whereby to teach the children. And from the time this internet and this kind of thing came into play, I saw it as the tree that we were not supposed to touch. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's how I see it, right? Children having the opportunity to go on these platforms without a discipline. That is very dangerous, and I think we are seeing the outcome now. I would want to make reference to the spiritual side of it, because this is a spiritual problem. It's not really the physical in the sense, it's a spiritual problem. And if you go to Colossians 3:21, it will identify where fathers provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. Right? And then if you go back into Ephesians 6, 4, I think, it made mention, 6:1-4. It made mention also according, let me see. It makes something similar in the scripture, similar scripture, right? Now the thing about it, when you already go into the depths of the studies of that verse, you would realize that having not teach the children of the spiritual side, right, of God, which that will be able to restrain them from going in the way that they ought to go. Having not taught them that, the children have nothing to restrain them at this point. It's the same thing with we adults, having come to Christ. Before we were out there doing our own thing, whatever we feel to do, whatever the world tells us to do, whatever, and we were just carried out. It's only when we had come to Christ, we were able now to not practice these things that is not pleasing to God. And the only way we were able to do it is having the knowledge of God. So the parents now who would have gained that knowledge will have to pass it on to their children, right? For they to be able also to restrain themselves. That's how we will restrain ourselves from not practicing the normal things of the world. They would also need to be taught of that they will be able to restrain themselves from not going in the way of all the temptation that is coming at them, and the teaching and the evil teaching that is coming at them. As I say again, the platform that they have access to, and as somebody rightfully mentioned it, during that 2-year period, I try to protect my children from not having too much access of that internet. And during that period, when they opened it up for school and they had it to go on, parents who go into school and these children on the device for themselves, and they just roaming all over the place and touching on things that they ought not to be touching or exposing themselves to. So now, having sure, no problem. I'm wrapping it up here. So now, as they come out from their safe zones, and coming into the environment now where they can practice what they have learned within that period, is all hell break loose, right? So now it requires now spiritual guidance to bring these children, to reprimand these children, and parents too, who do not know, right, to bring them back to that place. Other than that, we will run into real problems. Thank you.
Bro, you hear me?
Hello.
Is my on? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Professor, you hear me? Right. So good evening. I just want to just share this quickly because as Riquen said, sometimes we quote things that is not written. And I know in the minds of a lot of people they went confused. So the way we quote it is not written, but in the book of Proverbs 23 and verse 13 says, "Do not withhold discipline from your son. If you beat him with a rod can be nothing else but a rod, he will not die." So you're seeing two things there. Discipline with beating with a rod is a part of discipline. An act of discipline. How you do it is critical. So I just wanted to clarify that there. So we quote it as it's written, as the way we say it, but it is inferred in the scripture that says, listen, it's all right to use the rod.
Foolishness is bound up in it.
and Raymond O'Keel. Thank you guys so much for your contribution. We have to end it here. And we will be back next week, Saturday, for those of you who joined us for the first time. We're on every Saturday at 8, from 8 to 9:30. Thank you so much to our sponsor. That's the Feast Lady, Anaya Tony. Thank you so much for your sponsorship of the program. And you two folks can be part sponsor of this program. Let's get in contact with us. So God bless you. My name is Noel Richards, a.k.a. The Professor. And that's all for Men Talk for this evening. Good night, and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Don't know how you got in this mess. You're standing there looking, saying, where do I begin? Maybe it's too late, too long, too much, too far.
Hey, this is Noel Professor Richards, inviting you to join me every Saturday night at 8 p.m. for Men Talk. We will talk about how to live, how to love, and how to lead. It's 1.5 hours of men talking about all the things that men talk about. So don't miss it. It's Men Talk every Saturday at 8 p.m. on Isaac The Promise Facebook page, FBN TV, and Isaac 98.1 FM, The Promise.
Hello. Hey, Jack. You missed the meeting yesterday, boy. What happened? Andre, I was under some pressure, boy. Well, you know, Uncle have diabetes, high blood pressure, and poor circulation. He couldn't even walk properly yesterday, so I took him to the feet lady, boy, Dr. Anaya Tony. And let me tell you something. When they're done with him, he feels so good. You know the man forget he walking stick by them. When I go back for the next session, we'll get back, man. I must send her number to my cousin. She have a pinched nerve, lupus. And I think she uncle got stroke, you know. I had to see about my back pain, too. Well, Andre, what are you waiting for? Take these numbers down one time. 360-5166 and 478-7416. Dr. Anaya Tony, boy, the feet lady from Anaya Health and Wellness Center. You can't go wrong.